You've probably heard people calling grass-fed beef a scam. And honestly, after digging into the regulations and loopholes, I can see why they are upset. But before you write off grass-fed beef entirely, let me share what I discovered about this grass-fed controversy, because the truth is pretty crazy. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what's behind the grass-fed beef scam claims, what the regulations actually say versus what happens in reality, and most importantly, how to spot truly grass-fed beef when you want it. I'm not here to sell you anything or push an agenda. I'm just going to lay out the facts so you can decide for yourself. So why people are calling it a scam in the first place? Well, in 2016, something pretty significant happened that most people don't know about. Under the first Trump administration, the USDA actually withdrew their official grass-fed standard and repealed country of origin labeling. They basically said, "We're not going to police this anymore." But this is where it gets crazy. The Food Safety and Inspection Service still has to approve grass-fed labels, but they only do it based on paperwork, not actual inspections. It's essentially an honor system with legal consequences if you lie, but no one's checking the ranches. So when someone says grass-fed beef is a scam, they're often pointing to this: most every cow eats grass at some point in its life. Some producers may capitalize on this by calling beef grass-fed, even if the animal was only on pasture early on, then grain-finished later. If you see a label that just says grass-fed without saying 100% grass-fed or grass-finished, there might be some grain in that cow's history. Here's what really gets people fired up, and I think rightfully so. A huge chunk of the grass-fed beef sold in American stores isn't even from American farms. We're talking about 75 to 80% of grass-fed beef being imported, often from Australia, New Zealand, or South America. And here's the kicker. Until recently, if that imported beef was processed in a USDA facility here in the US, it could be labeled product of USA. Let me give you some real numbers from the research. In 2014, over 60% of grass-fed beef was from US producers. But after country of origin labeling was repealed, imports flooded in. By 2018, only about 15% of grass-fed beef sold here was actually domestic. That means 85% was imported, and often you couldn't tell from the label. Now, I'm not saying imported grass-fed beef is bad. Australian and South American grass-fed can be excellent quality, but if you're paying a premium thinking you're supporting American ranchers, you might want to know where it actually came from. The American Grass-Fed Association has been pretty vocal about this. They've said that without proper audits, you get unsubstantiated grass-fed label claims that erode consumer trust. And honestly, I get their frustration. But at the end of the day, the cost is a big factor for all of us, and the imports did help keep the costs lower. But the tariff situation happening now in 2025 is changing that fast. If you appreciate someone just laying out the facts without trying to sell you something, hit that like button. That's all we do here. Give you the information you need to make your own decisions. Now, in a minute, I'm going to tell you exactly what to look for on labels to find truly grass-fed beef when you want it. But first, let me address one thing that was on my mind when I was looking into all of this: the nutritional differences between grass-fed and grain-fed beef. Here's what the research actually shows. Grass-fed is typically leaner and has a different fat profile, more omega-3 fatty acids, more conjugated linoleic acid, and different types of saturated fats. It also tends to have more vitamin E and antioxidants. But, and I want to be completely honest here, the differences aren't as dramatic as some marketing makes them sound. We're talking about grass-fed beef having maybe 2 to 5 times more omega-3s than grain-fed, but the absolute amount is still pretty small compared to something like salmon. It's a nutritional improvement, but not a miracle transformation. The biggest benefit with grass-fed is the idea of cows having some pasture to roam and eat grass versus being locked up in overcrowded feedlots eating grains from stalls. There's just something wrong about keeping animals caged up their whole lives. So when people talk about a grass-fed beef scam, they're really talking about a few different things. First, the labeling loopholes that let partially grain-fed beef get called grass-fed. Second, the imported beef being sold as if it's domestic. And third, the lack of on-farm verification for many grass-fed claims. But here's what's not a scam. There are legitimate grass-fed producers doing exactly what they claim. You just need to know what to look. Look for labels that say 100% grass-fed and finished, not just grass-fed. Look for third-party certifications like the American Grass-Fed Association seal, which requires on-farm inspections. If origin matters to you, look for labels that specifically say where the cattle were born and raised. And honestly, if you find grass-fed beef that's significantly cheaper than other grass-fed options, ask yourself why. Is it just on sale? Real grass-fed beef typically costs more because it's more expensive to raise the cattle and requires more land. Look, I'm not here to tell you whether to buy grass-fed beef or not. That's your choice based on your values and budget, but I do think you deserve to know what you're actually getting when you see those labels. The grass-fed beef controversy exists because there are real loopholes and real misleading practices. But there are also real farmers doing exactly what they claim. If you want more straight talk about food labels and health topics, no hype, no hidden agenda, just the facts you need to make informed decisions, hit that subscribe button, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.